fucking cringe!
I'm a demon.
Yes, it's hard to believe, but once upon a time, the nerd lair was a super scene kid. And before that, I was a hyper weeb. Look at 16-year-old nerd lair. Look how cringe.
Look how cringe.
What I'm getting at is, through most of my life, and even still to an extent now, I've been considered a black sheep, a misfit. Which brings me to the topic of today's episode. I'm going to be talking about 5 different game franchise misfits on the Wii console that don't really seem to fit with the other games in their franchise. And before we get started, I want to let you guys know that this video is being sponsored by Precious Embers Crematorium. Now you can have that smoking hot body you've always wanted. I have a whole stack of games right here to talk about, so let's get started with our first game, Castlevania Judgement. Oh yeah, the bastard child in the Castlevania franchise. Why, you may ask? Because it's a fighting game. The best way I can describe this game is a mixture between Power Stone and Pokken. Each stage is a 3-dimensional plane where you can run in any direction. The main reason for having a good camera in a 3D fighting game like this is because the perspective gets so fucky. I would say for a more casual fighting game, it's not a bad concept. It's actually quite fun at times. When you do manage to get a really good combo going, it feels good when it's completed. And of course, it wouldn't be a proper Castlevania game if it didn't have very schlocky dialogue. No joke, the writing in this game is so hammy that I was laughing out loud multiple times throughout playing the arcade mode.
I ask you, show me the power of a true vampire hunter.
Pardon, milady, but I will not fight a woman.
Another thing this game has going for it is its art style, because it was all done by the guy who did Death Note. Now, I've never watched Death Note, it was a little after my time, but I really do like the art in that anime. And it makes this game look really cool, a lot cooler than it actually is. It's a shame, because this game, if it were to be the traditional 2D tournament fighter style, I could see this being a cult classic fighting game. But unfortunately, it suffered the fate of being one of those, it's alright games. And in my opinion, middle of the road is the worst position you could possibly be in, especially for a Castlevania game. Which leads me into our next game that we're going to talk about, which is a cult classic fighting game that doesn't suck, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. We all know what Marvel vs. Capcom is. The games are cemented in gaming history as being some of the best fighting games ever made. And as most of us know, the more recent installments to the franchise have been more or less But there's a vs. Capcom game that always seems to get shoved under the rug. It's one that was only released on the Wii, which is why it didn't sell very well and why it's more of a cult classic fighting game nowadays, and that's Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. I know some of you might be saying, that game sucks, it's too casual. Well, that's kind of why I like it. If you don't know what Tatsunoko is, it's a Japanese anime production company that has been producing anime since the early 60s. And a lot of the characters that production company created are in this game as playable characters. Like I said earlier, the mechanics for this fighting game are fairly simplistic, or casual if you will. As in, it's a lot easier for people who have never played a fighting game before to pick this game up and actually have a good time. i.e., it caters to people who button mash. But there is skill involved that is required to be good at this game. The controls are tight and the fighting is fast-paced, as a normal Marvel vs. Capcom game should be. Oh yeah, and I also have the official arcade stick that was made for this game. If you can find yourself a copy of Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, definitely pick it up. It's pretty cheap nowadays. I think you can get it for around $25 to $30, but it's one of those rare fighting game gems that really only made it to the Wii, so it didn't have a large distribution, but the people that have played it know what's up. Are you still watching? If you are, be sure to like and subscribe, because no one stays till the end of my videos to hear that shit that I say at the end. Up next is Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles: The Crystal Bearers. The Crystal Chronicles games have, in my opinion, always been pretty good spin-off games in the Final Fantasy franchise. They themselves as a whole could probably be considered misfit games. But honestly, only one of the Crystal Chronicles games falls into this category, and that's Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles: The Crystal Bearers. And if the title of the game isn't already annoying enough to say, the character of this game will probably put you over the edge. And first off, I want to say this game is fine. It's got a lot of what makes the Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles series charming. In the grand scheme of things, there's really only two problems I have with this game. They're kind of big ones, but really the game overall isn't that bad. First, we have the combat system, because this is one of those games where at a time it felt like almost an obligation to put Wii motion controls in your Wii game because it was the new technology. Basically, your character is a crystal bearer, which means he has telekinetic powers that are undefined, which allow you to lift objects and throw them, or even use it as a grappling hook. Or if you're like me, you use it to rob old ladies of their coin. It's extremely repetitive, and battling monsters can really be avoided almost 90% of the game. And now for the second problem with the game, the main character. His name is Lal, something? I don't know. He's so uninteresting and unrelatable that I don't even care to look it up again. And I was literally just playing this game. The reason why he's so unrelatable is because he's extremely cocky. He's almost like a Looney Tunes character. And his voice acting is probably the worst out of anyone in the game.
It would be safer and easier if I go first and pull you up, just like I did now.
But there are actually some things I do like about this game. It's filled with different mini games that aren't really connected to the story or progress the story, I guess you could say, but they're fun and it makes me feel like I'm playing an older Final Fantasy game. On top of that, the variety of different types of environments in this game is like a breath of fresh air. The graphics for the time on the Wii in this game are actually kind of impressive. I wouldn't really say that this game is bad, it's just different. It's different enough to be in this video, relative to the rest of the Crystal Chronicle games, which are different in their own right because they're spin-offs, but this one out of those spin-offs is the weirdest. I would say if you're a fan of the Crystal Chronicle games, definitely pick this one up. It's the last Crystal Chronicles game that has been released, I believe, aside from the remake on the Switch, which I hear a lot of people didn't like that one. The next game on my list is Metroid Other M. Ooh, I can hear people hissing. Is that? No, that's just my ear. When the first trailer for this game premiered, I remember everyone being so fucking hyped that we were finally getting a 3D Metroid game that went back more to its roots with some new 3D elements. I know at the time, a lot of Metroid fans, and still even to this day, were yearning, longing for a more classic Metroid game with the 2D side-scrolling and the rat in the maze kind of feel, but in a new 3D environment with new mechanics. And that's pretty much what Metroid Other M was. So why is there such a big divide with the fans of this game? Some people hate it, some people love it. It's really an on-the-fence kind of game. To put it bluntly, Samus is terrible in this game. The story consistently portrays an abusive relationship between Samus and the main protagonist. And throughout the entire game, the narrative tries to justify this really toxic relationship, which naturally pissed a lot of people off. We all grew up knowing Samus as the strong female protagonist who never said a word. Almost enigmatic, you could say. It's actually kind of insulting how one-dimensional she's depicted in this game. To be fair, we didn't really know that much about Samus. I can safely say I don't want to know her in real life. Throughout the whole game, she is delusional, annoying, and kind of a bitch. Ah, maybe that's why Brie Larson wanted to play her in the live-action movie. Samus aside, the gameplay for this is actually pretty solid. You get first-person mode, you get third-person mode, isometric, you get side-scrolling. It has everything, which is really nice to see some sort of variety like this in a Metroid game. Too bad they had to fuck up a really good female character. And finally, we are at the last game that I'm going to talk about, which is Dragon Quest Swords.
Yeah, I'm gonna slice you. I'm gonna slice you, you cunt.
For all those who haven't played a Dragon Quest game before, the super popular RPG franchise has been going on since the 1980s, despite the numerous sporadic localizations of the game in North America over the years. Dragon Quest only recently has gained a lot of popularity here in the States with its newest installment, Dragon Quest XI. But Dragon Quest Swords is what I would call the epitome of an early Wii game. There was a time period during the Wii's lifespan where it was almost mandatory to have the shitty Wii motion controls in your game because it was something new. It was cool to be able to swing the Wii remote and have a slash go through the enemy on screen. And originally, this game was actually supposed to be meant as a launch title for the Wii, but it ended up being delayed a little bit. Normally, this is what a Dragon Quest game looks like. Now this is what Dragon Quest Swords looks like. Notice a difference? Yeah, the entire game is first person. There's no overworld at all. And naturally, since this is a Wii game, it utilizes the Wii motion controls by being able to attack monsters on screen or use it to block attacks. Now at the time, this was actually a cool idea, but for someone like me who never really liked motion controls, it was less than impressive. The enemies are way too easy to kill, and the boss fights are nothing new. It's the same reused enemies from other Dragon Quest games. And it's also laughably short. You could beat the entire game in about 7 hours, which is really disappointing for an RPG franchise that's known for giving you hundreds of hours of gameplay. But of course, they couldn't have you stand there swinging a Wii remote for 100 hours plus. I'm sure people would, but the game's not really fun. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad game, it's just a lot different from what the normal fans were used to, and it was kind of a letdown, which in my book makes it perfect for this video. If you've never played a Dragon Quest game and want to try one, I would say you're probably gonna have the best time playing Dragon Quest XI on the PS4. Or Switch. Or Xbox. It's on every platform now. And that is going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe because I do content like this every week, so there's always something to watch. Go ahead and check me out on Instagram. Links are down below in the video description. And be sure to comment down below if you want to see me do another video like this, but with a different console, maybe like the PS2 or the Xbox even. Let me know what it is down below in the comments section. Thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time in the Nerd Lair. Stay weird.
You can push yourself to the limit, be strong and jump with me. You can fly above the rainbow with me, close your eyes and just believe.
Nothing's gonna stop you and me from getting to where we wanna while this beat is kicking. You know that you're my kindred.